Bitcoin holders, don't trust BlackRock. Don't trust Larry Fink. I know the Bitcoin is pumping and the ETFs are flying, but what if I told you that the new main character in the crypto space, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, doesn't care at all about Bitcoin? And maybe we just shouldn't be trusting BlackRock to do what's best for our hard-earned stacks of Satoshis. Here's the truth about Larry Fink, BlackRock, and what those ETFs might really mean for Bitcoin. So is Larry Fink the new crypto main character? Well, crypto always has main characters, those larger than life people who hold sway over the markets and can move markets just with a few words. Think back to the bull run in 2021. Who were the main characters? There were people like Sam, the bank man, who freed everybody from their money at FTX bastard. The effective altruist whose FTX exchange was delivering crypto to the masses, except, well, we all know what happened to FTX, and SBF, of course, now behind bars telling his prison guards to go out and buy Solana. On the other hand, you have quality main characters like Michael Saylor, the biggest Bitcoin bull on the planet, who's billions of dollars in profit on his Bitcoin play. He's still leading the charge over at MicroStrategy in adopting Bitcoin as the only asset worth holding on a corporate balance sheet. And then comes Larry Fink. In 2023, the new contender enters the arena. Lawrence Fink, Larry, the CEO of the mighty BlackRock, a man who was suddenly, surprisingly, all in on Bitcoin, talking like the best of them. So let's look at Larry's blockchain turnaround. At some point over the last decade, Larry Fink performed a complete 180 on crypto, on Bitcoin specifically, really crypto broadly. After all, this is a man who in 2017 was basically the view that there wasn't much more to crypto than just good old-fashioned money laundering.
But most importantly, what I think about most of these cryptocurrencies, it just identifies how much money laundering there is being done in the world.
Fast forward to 2023, though, and it's a different story with Larry Fink actively now promoting the benefits of Bitcoin. What a wild turnaround.
I believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold in many ways. Instead of investing in gold as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against the onerous problems of any one country, or the devaluation of your currency, whatever country you're in. Let's be clear, Bitcoin is an international asset.
So what happened to change Larry's mind? Well, there are maybe three possibilities to explain this. One, Larry really just took the orange pill, man, as crazy as it might seem. He sat down, he read the Bitcoin Standard, he had the epiphany moment, and now he's simply onboarding boomers because he truly sees the value in Bitcoin. He's here for Satoshi's vision of a new future. In fact, even when Fink was linking crypto and money laundering back in 2017, BlackRock was actually testing a private blockchain to work with custodial banks. As always, watch what they do, not what they say. That being said, though, Bitcoin is a very, very different prospect to private blockchain bullshit. Bitcoin is freedom money. It is opposed to the very financial establishment, which is BlackRock. BlackRock is the epitome of everything that Bitcoin is against. Bitcoiners emphasize self-custody, and it's something that's actually sidestepped by these Bitcoin ETFs. We're trusting BlackRock. BlackRock ETFs are kind of antithetical to what Bitcoin is. Number two, there's another possibility. Here we are, it's Bitcoin's second decade. The risk-reward ratio on Bitcoin for a financial titan like BlackRock is simply at a point where it will be bad business and not make any financial sense to not jump in and be one of the first movers in the space. Plus, clients want it. They're getting the calls. Larry's a smart guy. He can read where the world's headed. They want to make that cheddar. That means Larry Fink loves Bitcoin for the same reason as many buyers before him, because it prints him money. The only difference is that backing him up, Larry Fink has BlackRock's massive reputation, good and bad, $10 trillion of money, and very powerful PR forces. Remember, this is one of the most powerful organizations in the world, more powerful than most countries. And number three, grab your tinfoil hat here, guys. This is that Fink is not buying into Bitcoin. No. He's appropriating Bitcoin because he, or more appropriately, the circles that he moves in see Bitcoin as a threat that they can neutralize by locking it up in ETFs and assimilating it into the fiat system that he sits at the top of the pyramid on. Sound far-fetched? Maybe, but then let's look at Fink's maneuvering prior to the Bitcoin ETFs. Well, Larry Fink was publicly cold on crypto. Behind the scenes, it was a different story. You see, in April 2022, BlackRock invested in a $400 million funding round for the USDC stablecoin provider Circle. Then, in August of the same year, and you need to listen to this because not a lot of people know this. Not a lot of people know this. BlackRock partnered with Coinbase, and they began offering Bitcoin services to their private institutional clients. Way before the Bitcoin ETF, they front ran you. Okay, fine. So what? Fink came around to crypto. Big news, perhaps, but we can get a sense here of how what's publicly being stated doesn't always reflect the longer-term plans for BlackRock. BlackRock, ESG scores, and of course the World Economic Forum, it's all linked together here. And then there's the way BlackRock leverages its dominance, as with Larry Fink's ESG push back in the day. This approach emphasized not the shareholders, but stakeholders, with Fink stating in a 2018 letter to CEOs that every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society, which, sounds good. He says companies must benefit all their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. Again, it all sounds good, but to an extent, it was a bit of a radical proposal when you really think about it. Shareholders are being bumped in favor of communities, and private enterprises are then obliged to benefit people who don't use or invest in those products. And the bottom line, financial performance, takes a backseat to making a positive contribution to society, whatever the heck that means. And who decides what is and what isn't positive? People like Larry Fink. And anyway, isn't operating a profitable business a positive contribution to society and itself, give people jobs and pays taxes and all that crap? Isn't that what's supposed to happen? Critics say, of course, this all goes against free market principles. It makes companies prioritize whatever the hell Larry Fink is in favor of, which gives him, again, excessive power. Even though he already has excessive power, he gives him even more, the kind of power usually reserved for elected officials. And it gets even more heated when you consider that a lot of people don't actually agree with Larry Fink's vision for the future of the world, and how his links to the WEF confuse all that. At a time when society is so polarized, it might feel like a civil war might break out in some countries. Then, last year, perhaps seeking to duck out of the argument or take a bit of heat off, Fink actually pivoted away from openly endorsing ESG policies, saying, I don't use the word ESG anymore because it has been entirely weaponized. As mentioned, Larry Fink is also connected with the World Economic Forum, which has this Klaus Schwab character who could really just be a Bond villain. I mean, come on. Life's almost a parody sometimes. Is this real? He's infamous for, of course, the article cheerfully telling the world, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Now, if this doesn't get round to explaining who will own everything, I guess BlackRock probably is implied in this, but the WS playbook is pretty consistent with the ideas that Larry Fink has talked about publicly. Elevate the vague concept of stakeholders and whatever that means for them, evade free market norms by merging business and politics, put the corporations in charge of the world. But then this month, there was a wild twist when the WEF released a video actually praising Bitcoin. It's about a national park in Africa using hydroelectric Bitcoin mining, which is great. But why the pro-BTC switch? Again, could it be because Larry Fink is on the WEF board of trustees, and Larry Fink is also, of course, the CEO of BlackRock, and they're just telling the media, yeah, go pro-Bitcoin, let's get everybody in, get all their Bitcoin into our coffers. They're loading up on megatons of Bitcoin into their ETF products and long-term implications for miner security and all this stuff when all the Bitcoin's not moving on-chain anymore, and there's no on-chain fees. It's just Larry and BlackRock. So that leads to the big question, can Larry hard fork Bitcoin? So look, what if BlackRock decides to hard fork Bitcoin and create a World Economic Forum friendly, environmentally friendly, corporate version, corporate friendly, stakeholder economy Bitcoin. Drop the original and nefariously lock everyone who bought the Bitcoin ETF into the new establishment approved and establishment controlled copy. Is this likely? Is this even possible? Well, it is true that in the event of a hard fork on Bitcoin, that BlackRock has the sole discretion to choose which version it continues using. Did you know that? And this led to discussions about whether BlackRock might actually create a mutant ESG box ticking proof of stake Bitcoin and declare it to be the real Bitcoin, the climate friendly Bitcoin, the one rubber stamped by the WEF or whatever they think would win people over. And sure, forking is technically doable. But where it gets tricky is that BlackRock would need to convince all the node operators out there to run the new version. And that would be near impossible to pull off, especially as node operators holding BTC are financially incentivized not to do anything that might actually reduce the value of their coins. They'd be voting against their own interests. And they are definitely not believers in the BlackRock vision of the future. By the way, Bitcoin forks have already happened multiple times. So we have real world examples of how they actually play out. Bitcoin Cash, for example, very famous version of that. And while it's still around, its value has absolutely collapsed against that of BTC. So BlackRock Bitcoin is an interesting hypothetical from that perspective, but not anything to be seriously concerned about, in my opinion. So is it a positive that Larry Fink changed teams and he's on Team Bitcoin right now and he's one of the new main characters? Well, let's just think of the negatives real quick. Number one, too much Bitcoin concentrated with one particular investment firm that isn't really aligned with Bitcoin's underlying principles and goals for human society. Not amazing. But they're here for buck, and most of us are too. Number two, BlackRock's history of using its power to try and shape the corporate world, as its push with ESG has shown. And there, of course, they're uncomfortably strong links with unpopular organizations like the World Economic Forum, which I don't think any of us actually really trust, do we? Then there's the positives. Now, some of these are showing up in the charts already. Number one, of course, is BlackRock brings the ka-ching, ka-ching. They brought massive increased capital flows into Bitcoin. And that means, of course, that the price goes up. Like I always say, we're looking at a once in a market liquidity event happening right now. Number two, rising prices then bring in further new capital. People like to back winners. That has a positive feedback loop. BlackRock makes more money in that situation. Ultimately, ETFs may be one more stepping stone on Bitcoin's path towards global adoption. Number four, and if BlackRock has outsized influence and it's now in BlackRock's financial interest to legitimize Bitcoin, that actually sounds like a big positive win for longtime holders, doesn't it? So, is BlackRock to be trusted? Probably not. But that doesn't automatically mean there's a cabal-led plot to undermine Bitcoin and all this kind of stuff. But I also can't rule out such a possibility. But look, Bitcoin is anti-fragile, so it can't be undermined anyway. They can try, but they'll fail. And while BlackRock has used its power to influence the corporate world, Bitcoin is not a corporation. It is a decentralized network of software and one of the strongest computer networks in the world. But also, BlackRock exists to make money, and part of the way that Bitcoin gains adoption is by flashing the kinds of multiples that attract profit seekers. This is what we mean by number go up technology. And Bitcoin has been described as a Trojan horse. Newbies, including BlackRock, who's kind of a newbie to Bitcoin, they're attracted by the profits. They buy in. They become Bitcoiners without even realizing it. In this way, individual profits usher in widening adoption, and adoption leads to Bitcoin improving or perhaps even replacing the very fiat system that Bitcoin was designed to challenge in the first place. And if this process is real, then BlackRock is being pulled into Bitcoin's orbit for essentially the same reason as almost everyone else who has ever bought Bitcoin before, because it's profitable. It makes money in the long run for people. And in that case, it's not BlackRock that's absorbing Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin that's absorbing BlackRock. Let that blow your mind for a minute. Thanks for watching.